What's up, everyone? I just checked out A Quiet Place 2 in theaters, so let's review it. Real quick before we get into the review, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought about A Quiet Place 2. And this is going to be a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't seen the movie, you're free to watch it, though I always encourage you to see the movie first. Anyway, let's get into the review. So this movie is pretty much bigger in every way, as it follows the Abbott family immediately following the events of A Quiet Place. And essentially they escape the farm and they go to this fire they see, which is a warehouse area where Cillian Murphy is, who's kind of the new character in the movie. I'm not going to go any further into the plot because there would be spoilers that way. Other than that, that's pretty much the plot of the movie. It goes on quite a bit from there. I don't want to go into any specifics because I don't want to spoil anything, because I really think it's a movie worth watching. But like I said, everything in this movie is really ramped up as there's more action, there's more characters, there's more horror, and the scope of this movie is just quite a bit bigger, as it is with most sequels. But in my opinion, this movie lives up to those expectations in every single way. Really, everything great about the first movie returns in this movie, whether it's like the phenomenal sound and just editing in general, whether it's like the great acting, the anxiety-inducing horror, or it's just the great directing. And let me say, John Krasinski really solidifies himself as a great director in this movie. There's a number of scenes in this movie that are just shot really well, like really high-level type stuff in my opinion. Especially, there's a flashback scene, like really the opening scene. It's like a flashback origin type scene of what's going on, and it's a really well shot scene with just, when you mix the cinematography, which is also incredible. It's very modern horror. I mentioned that with A Quiet Place, but it feels like, you know, Hereditary, The Witch, stuff like that. It's very similar to those kind of movies in terms of how it's shot. But that opening scene, it's like 10 minutes. It's really incredible, and it kicks off the movie so well. And it's just, like I said, it's directed really well by John Krasinski. There's a number of scenes where they mix the sound editing with just the directing. It's really good, and like it is with the first one. This movie is also super creative in how it deals with this concept of these monsters who, you know, they can only hunt based on what they hear. Obviously, the first movie does that quite well, and this movie continues to do that and really just continues to evolve that concept and add more things and more different creative ways that people have to survive in this world, especially since we're going to have more characters. This movie really does a good job at adapting that, and it kind of has a really good mix of returning elements while still bringing in some new elements to the movie. And overall, this movie really just does a great job of world building and continuing to build this, you know, kind of world we're in with, you know, these monsters. And it's really, because we get a nice origin story right at the beginning. You get really more means of survival and ways people are surviving in this world. And really, we get a lot of development of the monsters and their like potential weaknesses. So that's all really good stuff, and it really just helps kind of create a universe really with this movie. And I definitely think we're going to be seeing another one. I'll get to that in a little bit. But it really does a good job at continuing to, really what a good sequel should do, and just continuing everything that the first one did great. This movie worked obviously really well as a horror movie. There's a number of really scary scenes, but really more like intense, like anxiety-inducing scenes. Not as much scary like horror, like a true horror movie, but more like just like edge of your seat kind of intense type stuff with how they utilize all their tools to just really make it just really terrifying. But this movie also, alongside the scary parts, has a lot more action in there, and really action with the monsters. So there's a lot more of that. It's more of a horror action, kind of. I wouldn't call it a horror action, but it's, you know, it's almost there. There is quite a bit of action, and like it's very present throughout the entire movie. It's also kind of like a survival adventure movie, as you do see these characters kind of go off in different directions doing their different things. So there's a lot of like adventure, kind of discovering and kind of exploring type stuff going on. So that's obviously really interesting. And once again, that goes to the world building, as we just get to see a lot more stuff. Where in the first movie we were only on one farm, this movie you see a lot more places, a lot more characters, but all of that stuff is really great. I really like the action, and once again how they utilize the action with these monsters, who they really, you know, distinct as what these monsters can do. That becomes really clear in this movie, a lot more clear than it is in the first one, where there is a lot of unknown from the end of A Quiet Place. A lot is cleared up in this movie, and that's really nice. especially when, kind of building this movie building the first one as a franchise, where it's not just, a single horror movie, where this is a movie, a universe. One great element in this movie is the acting. I especially liked Emily Blunt and Cillian Murphy's acting. I'm a personal huge fan of Cillian Murphy. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. But so it was really nice to see him in this movie, and he gets a very large role in this movie. He's pretty much one of the main characters. There's like three main characters in this movie. Emily Blunt, the deaf child, and and Cillian Murphy, and then the other kids are there as well. But I guess the other kid is pretty big, has a pretty big role. So mainly there's pretty much 4 lead characters, but they all do a great job with the acting. I did notice the youngest boy, the middle-aged boy. He looked quite a bit older. Obviously that's not the movie's fault. They didn't know they were going to be making a sequel this soon, probably. So, and teenagers, they age, but so that's not the movie's fault. Just something I noticed. I'm not going to complain about it, but it's definitely present in the movie. This movie was really character focused and really just develops these characters a lot more. This movie, I think, has a lot more character development throughout this movie, and it's really a lot. It's squeezed into this movie. I will get into that a little bit more, but there's just a lot of character development from Cillian Murphy as the new character. He gets quite a bit of development as developing these old characters and these old relationships, and kind of building off the events of the first one. Obviously, John Krasinski's character died, so they're building off of that as well. So there's a lot of character arcs, and I really like in this movie that they actually split up the characters. And you'll know that happens quite early on in the movie. That really adds room for developing relationships between different characters, and you'll notice that throughout the movie. I think that's a really good idea that they did in this movie. I like, and I'll get into the editing a little bit, but like how they edit the 2 different plots that are going on in this movie, they do an excellent job with it, and kind of having different things timed to be happening at the same time to really ramp up the intensity. They do it's so excellent with what they do there. And I really enjoy that, and it really just kind of builds the movie as you go along. So like I mentioned, the sound editing in this movie is just incredible. Obviously, it was with the first one. It's pretty much the exact same in this one. They do just an excellent job. I really like, there's a lot of scenes where the deaf girl, there's this chaos going on around. In the origin scene, there's a scene where like the monsters are showing up for the first time, and then like everything's going on, then just cuts to her, and you can't hear a thing. Meanwhile, in the background, just everything's going to hell. I thought that was a really good, not only the shot looked really good, but it was really like an impactful scene, and like just it's really powerful what they can do with the silence of that character. But just the sound editing is incredible, and it's really amazing what they did with it. It does such a good job at really building the intensity of this movie and really making you feel kind of the vibes of this movie. And that's just a nod to the sound editors. It definitely deserves an Oscar nomination like the first one got, and it's pretty much more the same. Also, this movie features quite a bit more score. The first one, it's there, but it's not super present. This movie quite a bit has score to fill in some of those gaps, and I think that's needed because you don't want the movie to be too quiet, especially if you're in a theater watching it, because if it's really quiet, that can be kind of unpleasant. So you do want a score to kind of fill in that a little bit, and this movie does have a much more present score. You'll definitely notice that throughout the movie. So I was completely fine with that. I thought the score was actually quite good, especially during some of the more intense scenes. It really added to the scenes, and I just really like where this movie took these characters. Where you have your small scale of the first one, where it just really expands everything. I really like what they did with that, and there's really a lot of movie crammed into only 100 minutes, and I think one of the biggest issues with this movie, not that is any major issues, but you might feel like you didn't really get all your answers because there's just so much that goes on here. It kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but it didn't feel like it fulfilled its job because just everything happens so quickly, and you really just want more because this movie's really a roller coaster from start to finish, and then it doesn't feel like the roller coaster finishes. I feel like it definitely sets up a third movie. I hope it definitely sets up a third movie, not in a bad way, like Batman v Superman way. It definitely just succeeds as its own movie, but I do think it might leave you feeling like a little unfulfilled with just how it ends and everything they're building. But that's not a huge complaint at all. I think this movie did a great job. But other than that, I don't really have any major complaints on the movie. And I don't really have any complaints at all. It's just, it really does a great job. There's, a few like plot elements that don't necessarily work. I don't want to go into those. I mentioned in my Quiet Place review, I don't like nitpicking plot holes, because John Krasinski, he takes this really bold concept and he makes a really good movie with it, and I'm fine with that. There's going to be plot issues when you have a movie about monsters who hunt you based on what they hear. That's not an easy thing to do. So there's going to be plot issues, but I don't want to get into those because I don't like nitpicking that kind of stuff. The movie's great and I enjoy it. But this movie really is just a terrific horror sequel. It's just as scary and intense as the first one, though it might be a little more diverse in how it's scary, where the first one's very concentrated on, the pregnancy and building off of that. This one has a lot more different elements that make it scary. But really, I just love everything about this movie. Everything that's great about the first one returns, while it still has a lot of great additions and expanding this world. Especially, I love the addition of Cillian Murphy as really a lead character in this movie, and he plays Emmett. I'm really excited for the potential of a third movie, and maybe beyond that, who knows? But definitely, I think I definitely think there's plans for a potential third movie, as I feel like it kind of hints at it. I don't want to go into spoilers, obviously, but it's nonetheless, I just think this movie was really, really good. Definitely a successful horror sequel, and maybe a horror sequel that actually surpasses the original. I can't say that for certain with only one watch, but I really enjoyed this movie. I really had a good time with it, and it's really an incredible, not just an incredible horror movie, but an incredible movie. So I'm going to give it a 93% and an A. Right now, that score is higher than the original, but like I said, I can't say it's better than the original right now. Right now I like it better, but who knows how that will happen in the future. Anyways, that's going to do it for my review of A Quiet Place Part 2. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of A Quiet Place Part 2. Did you like it? Were you disappointed by it? Who knows? I personally, like I said, I really enjoyed it. Anyways, that's going to do it for the video. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.